Ka timata kia mātou hui mo te karikia. He honore, he kruare ki te atua, he maungarongo ki te whenua, he whakaro pai ki ngā tangata kato. He hanga e tātua, he ngā kauhau ki roto ki tēnā o mātou. Whakatongi e tō wairua tapu. He awhina, he tuhu i o mātou. He ako hoki ngā mihi mō tēnei rā, mō te ata nei. Āmene. Kia rā tātou. Right. Well, thank you all for coming along today. There's not much more we can do, but hui under the current circumstances, but they're paitunu. I just need to read some things before we move into the meeting. So I'll declare the meeting is open. The meeting is expected to take approximately 1 hour. For the confidential section at the end of this meeting, only the authority members and key staff will be able to stay. All other members will be asked to leave, or all others will be asked to leave, and the meeting then rejoin for the workshop after the confidential section has finished. Secondly, I remind members and staff that the public section of this meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting and archived for a period of 3 years. I also remind all present that the local government decision making affords no protection to members and council officers for comments made during the meeting that are subsequently challenged in the court of law determined to be slanderous. So just wanted to say that, make sure that everyone's aware of that while we have our meeting. So I'm just going to move to point 2. Ngā honia, the apologies. Do we have any apologies?
We have an apology for potential early departure from Councillor Matamoana MacDonald.
Okay.
Yeah, Te Taru here. Just a departure at 11 o'clock for me, sorry.
Thank you.
Grant here. Can I put in an apology for Councillor Scrimger if he's not in attendance?
Yep.
Jeff Rice, if he's not in attendance.
Yep.
Apology for me, I'll be leaving at 12.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? Can I have a mover? Well, I'll move. Can I have a seconder?
Yep, Te Taru.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If we're moving or second, just say your name, and then I'll ask who the mover is and second, and then if you just say your name, then we can get that recorded. Thank you. Just moving to point 3, public forum. We have nothing. So moving on to 4, items not on the agenda. There are no new items for the agenda. However, an email has been received from Tapuiki Iwi Authority confirming the appointment of myself as the current representative and Jeff Rice as the alternate. So that'll be covered in agenda item 10.1. Okay, moving on to 5, order of business. There's no change in the order of our business. 6, declaration conflicts of interest. So this is a call for any declarations of conflict of interest from any of the members.
Yes. Maru, Tapsel.
Kia ora, Maru.
I was on the representing Waitaha, and I've been nominated on the Ngāti Whakaue, a representative to the Maru o Kaituna.
Yes. Okay. That's fine, Maru.
Right.
that what you're declaring?
Yeah, I'm declaring that may come into some sort of conflict later on in our discussions.
Okay. Any others? We've made note of that. Okay. 7, public excluded business to be transferred into the open. There are none. Point 8, minutes from the last meeting. So those are the minutes that we had in Rotorua. So are there any matters arising from or amendments to those minutes for those who were in attendance? I think we had a full attendance. I think there was only one, there was one of the actions was that that I, on behalf of the authority, that I put a submission in for Plan Change 5, which has happened, and I've emailed that to members. If you haven't received that, then that is filed, and that'll probably be part of the discussion later. No? Okay, so can I have a mover for the minutes? Somebody preferably who was here. I think we were all there.
I'll move, Dean.
Thank you, Matamoana. Second.
I'll second. Nick. Oh.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, point 9, verbal updates. Do any of the members have anything you'd like to update the authority on? No. Okay, moving on. Just to the chair report. Now, it's a little bit of a thing. I'm actually meant to be. We're going through a process to choose our chair, so I'm going to assume that I still hold the chair for now and just do the chair's verbal report, and then we'll go through the membership appointment probably after this. So, just in regards, if there's no objection from members. Just some of the updates in regards to verbal report. So just to let members know, we put Maramina and myself got together. That's the Rangi Taiki chair and the Kaituna chair. We got together and put a submission to a joint submission on behalf of both authorities to the LTP, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, LTP. We were asking for a secretariat, having somebody who is kind of available to both entities. So we were successful in getting that position. So just as an update, at the moment, we're going through looking at what the role of this person might be. Now, part of it is around joining both the Rangi Taiki and the Kaituna River authorities together, so that there's common things that we do, and we feel like having a position or a number of positions within that descriptor would be beneficial for both entities. So. So we were successful in that, and we're going currently through what is the role of that person. And I just want to put it out to the members, if any of you feel like you'd like to be part of that discussion, please let me know, because it's early days and we're just working through with Regional Council at the moment with Kataraina's team around what that might involve. So if there's any interest, please let me know. Happy to open that up for a conversation, not in this particular meeting, but at a later date. So that's probably the first part. The second part is that the Maru or Kaituna Pc5 submission. So that got in last minute. It was late, but we did get that in. That's been acknowledged and filed. And no doubt we'll hear the update as we go on through that part of the process. FCO resource consent update. So I might just ask Pim, can you just explain where, update where that is, because it's become a little bit technical, and so if you could do that, thank you, Pim.
Kia ora, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so as those of you who've been on the authority for a while will know, AFCO's resource consents expired about 2.5 years ago now, and they are currently operating under what's called Section 124 rights, I think it is. Is it 124, Joe? Which allows...
Yes, that's right.
Thank you. It's good to have a couple of RMA planners in the room as well. The Section 124 allows a consent holder to continue under the terms of their expired consent so long as they are in the process of developing and finalising a replacement application or a new application for those same activities. Usually those extensions aren't as long as 2.5 years, but AFCO's in a bit of a complicated situation. So they have a number of consent applications, including discharge of treated wastewater from the plant, discharge of water from their treatment wetlands to ground, discharge of stormwater from the roof of and the concrete areas of their plant to ground, and also taking of water for use. And now the taking of water had initially not been bundled up with the discharge consents, but they were advised by the consent authority that it would be useful to have all of the matters heard in one hearing. So a decision was made by them last year to bundle all of their consent applications together. However, because the allocation status of groundwater in the lower Kaituna catchment is relatively highly allocated, my understanding, there may be some difficulty in resolving that matter. And so I think at the moment, Todd Whitaker, who is the consultant processing this application together with Marlene Bosch from our consents team, they are considering now decoupling them again and proceeding with the 3 discharge consents. But so that's why you haven't heard an update recently. Not quite sure where it's going to land and exactly when we might expect a hearing, but it is caught up in that type of discussion. Joe, do you wish to add any further detail to that?
No, I'm not across the detail there, other than to note that Te Maru have got their submission in lodged, and that was last year. So that will come to fruition once we know what the process is going forward.
And my understanding is that the applicant will seek to have a mediation session with, a pre-hearing discussion with submitters to try and resolve the matters of submission, and that will include Te Maru o Kaituna River Authority.
Thank you, Pim. Just the last point on the Chair's report is the Kaituna mole, or the fishing out at the cut there, it's undergoing some design and upgrading, and that, as we heard in the last meeting. So I just wanted to share some of the ideas, the design ideas that have come through, and we're just seeking any feedback of what thoughts might be in regards to it's kind of the surfacing embellishments, I suppose. Yeah. Pim, are you able to share your screen with everyone so they can see the designs?
Yep, I'll just grab it back up on my screen. Apologies.
Dean, Marinda, yeah, just to let you know that Nikki Douglas has got her hand up.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Nikki, this might be a question.
Oh, no, oh, sorry, I just wanted to give a very short update when you're done, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Okay, so can members see this design on the screen? Yep, okay. So what we're talking about here, the Kaituna mole, is the structure down at the cut. So at the very end of Ford Road, the concrete and steel structure that was built in 1957 to hold the Kaituna River mouth at that location. As you know from previous updates, one of our engineers, Brad Harburn, is working with a contractor to replace the sheet piling, so putting a new row of sheet piling right around the outside, about a metre outside the existing sheet piling, and then filling the void with concrete, and then capping the surface with concrete. One of the suggestions from a tangata whenua collaboration group meeting associated with the Kaituna Rediversion project was that consideration be given to an appropriate design for the surface of that structure. So rather than just having bare concrete or a basic pattern, was there something else that could be done? Nominations for potential artists were called for from the iwi around Makitu, and two names were brought forward. One was Frank Mohi and one was Te Kaiamo Okeroa Rogers. Frank didn't have the capacity, but Te Kaiamo did, and he's come up with this design. So this is the car park area here on the left, and that's the first bit of the mole that you walk out onto, and this is where people typically line up with their fishing rods. If you can see where the hand is on the screen, and they'll fish out into the river here or out into the sea over here. I won't read out everything that's on the screen, but so there's a proposal for a tukutuku pattern here on this entry area, and potentially a more evolved design on this right-hand side, involving the Mangopare ko whaiwhai pattern, as well as the Puhoro ko whaiwhai pattern, and then right at the end, a whiri design, and he's made a few notes as to why he's chosen those particular elements. Dean, is that the summary that you were after?
Yeah, thank you. So that's currently the design being proposed. If there's any comments, can we send this out to members, Pim?
Yes.
So if you have any strong comments, you can send them to either Pim or myself, and we will get them onto the designer. There was one story, Maru, you fellas might remember, that they used to talk about Te Arawa Waka going out and dragging large nets out from there to catch when the kahawai and that were on the run. I think the name of the net was the kaharo or some name like that. So it's just part of that history of fishing out on that point, and those large nets were then the fish were brought and divided up amongst the various tribes. So Maru, you might have a better memory around that story and that, but it seemed to be one of the great stories of fishing out there on the cut there. So maybe the incorporation of a net or cooping or something.
Yeah. Well, the design isn't important. I think that a literature review needs to be had to tell a real story, because I recall I was a boy when after the war, and I could see all the changes that was happened, particularly when Ford's Cut went in, and the depletion of the fish stock. And just incidentally, I always get tangled up with this, the mana o te wai. The full statement should be the mana o te wai me ngā atua. In other words, the footprints of the gods lies in the future, lies with the future, the mana of the wai, the power of the water. And that's highly important, because it's these designs are meaningless without, and I always refer to that, have you consulted the fish? Because if the fish stock no longer exists in those areas, that's the important part about it. How you design your riparians, how you design all those sort of things. is an important part of it. Yeah, and that incidentally, that one who was Te Pōkea, who built the big net. Te Pōkea was my great grandmother was Te Pōkea's wife. That's my connection to Ngāti Pikia and the Waitaha connection. But there's a lot of stories to go about that whole coastline in Maketu. The place there called Kiokio comes from that the moon of Tangaroa Kiokio, which means in June you can sight the whole landscape, and that's what they used to do down in those days. And you had pipakas like the Reeds used to say, grab your tablecloth, we're going down for breakfast. That used to be a sign that the kahawai were running. All those things need to be bought, and unless you get a proper literature view of those things, then designs and that are, in my view, quite meaningless.
Kia ora Maru, e pai tonu te kōrero. So I think Pim, we will tee up a time and probably sit with Maru would be a good thing, and have a bit of a kōrero around some of that, and with our designer, and see how we can factor that interpretation. And yeah, okay.
Sure. Yeah. So you'll notice on the call today is Brad Harburn. He's just here so he can firsthand listen to the kōrero. And yeah, we've also got some emailed feedback from Waitaha and from Ngāti Whakaue's runanga. I think Manu may have been part of that kōrero in the last couple of days. So thanks very much. And yeah, yep, we'll definitely set that up, Dean. I should also just mention that at the moment, the tuku part of it is definitely provided for within the budget. The other part of it is just subject to budget at the moment, but I'm sure that between the parties there's a way of resolving that particular constraint. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you, Pim. Thank you, Murray. Nikki. Jump back to you, Nikki.
Morena tātou. Just in terms of the Pātaka Kai project, so just wanted to note that we gave an update to our Te Maru o Kaituna, Te Maru o Rangiwewahi Hui, and there was full support for the project, and just noting that it's now been received funding from Te Waimāori Trust. So just keen to acknowledge the work of the team putting that together, particularly Alva, and she presented at our last hui. Rangiwewahi support that, and really keen to identify how we can continue to be involved. So ngā mihi.
Very good. Thank you, Nikki. I think that's part of our conversation today, and Alva may be joining us to update us on some of that. So that's very good. Okay, so that was point 10. If we move to 10.1, I'm going to pass this.
Just a moment, Chairman Dean. I believe Councillor Daly would like to do an update on behalf of Western Bay.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I can't see who's.
Yeah, we'll do our best to keep track for you. Thank you.
Kia ora, Grant.
Oh, kia ora, Dean. Yeah, apologies, I was sleeping a bit of sleep earlier on, but a lot of the report is going to be covered later under the wastewater plant and Autoparia. But just briefly, we have adopted our long-term plan now, and some Kaituna action plan implementation was approved, $50,000 for 3 years per annum. Bell Road River access, $148,000 over 4 years. Walking and cycling, a significant increase in funding, $13.85 million over 10 years district-wide. And the draft walking and cycling action plan does include Kaituna connections, and the budget for Autoparia, which will be covered by Katie, I believe, a bit later. So that's all for me, thanks.
Thank you, Grant. Are there any other updates?
We have not been advised of any.
Okay.
Chief Fiddle.
Thank you all. We'll move to 10.1, which is membership appointments. For this, I'm going to hand back to Pim De Monchi as Chief Executive for this area, for the Kaituna to Maru, to walk us all through, I suppose, this part of the process. If I can do that, Pim.
Thank you, and certainly not the Chief Executive, but but happy to be the Chief Executive's delegate in this particular case. So, members, if you look at page 18 of the PDF agenda, item 10.1 there, you'll see the paper's called Membership Appointments. And essentially, there are 4 recommendations. Recommendation 1 is simply receiving the report. Recommendation 2 is to confirm the appointment of, and then there's a space. So we've received an email from Witere Williams, the new chairman of Tapawika Iwi Authority, to confirm that Dean Flavel is the primary nominee and Jeff Rice the alternate nominee of TIA. And so the Te Maru or Kaituna River Authority needs to confirm the appointment of Dean in that regard. So Tony, you will enter Dean's name into that space in the resolution, I think.
I certainly will, thank you.
So if we do those 2 first, I don't know if we can get a mover and a seconder for those 2 recommendations first, and then we go on to the next part of this report, which is about the selection and appointment of a chairperson.
Nikki here, I'm happy to move.
Thank you.
Got a Nikki? Is there a seconder?
Here, I'll second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Okay, so the next part, recommendation 3, is one of those Local Government Act aficionado matters where you do have a choice of voting system. Our governance folk are recommending that the authority selects system B, which is that you just have a call for nominations and then a simple vote. But before we get to that point, we should call for nominations or nominees for the position of chair to determine whether or not we actually need to have a vote at all. So can I call for nominations for the position of chair for Te Maru o Kaituna River Authority? I think you are allowed to self-nominate if you wish, or you can have that nomination come from a third party.
I'll put my pen up then. Yes, so I'm self-nominating. Yeah.
Kia ora, Dean. Is there a seconder for Dean's nomination?
I'll second. Nikki
Kia ora,
here.
Nikki.
Thank you.
All right, now we have that awkward silence where we ask if there are any other nominees. Tanya Tapsell is smiling. I presume that doesn't mean that she's self-nominating. No, she's shaking her head.
I move nominations closed, Councillor White.
Thank you, Te Taru. Is there a seconder for that movement, that motion?
I'll second. It's Tanya.
Thanks, Tanya. Okay, so we have one nominee. We also have an additional motion that nominations close, in which case the motion becomes that the authority appoints Dean Flavel as chairperson for the authority for a term of 3 years pursuant to the Act. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that motion? A mover is Manu Pene. I see his hand is up. Do we have a seconder? Grant, Councillor Daly, thank you. All those in favour? Put your hand, just click on the reaction button or put your thumb in the air or something. All those against? Nick, I presume that was a delayed aye rather than a, yeah. Kia ora, Nick. All right, well, in that case, thanks very much. That was nice and easy. Thank you, Dean, for putting your hand up again. And thanks, members, for making this an easy process to follow. So, Tony, does that fulfill the requirements of this paper?
It does. However, and sorry for not pointing this out earlier, Councillor White, in this particular forum, you're a non-voting member.
Oh,
So
okay.
yes, so when we confirmed the appointment of Dean Flavel as the representative, we had Nikki Douglas and Councillor White. I do need a different seconder, please.
Picky. Oh, well, the intent was there.
Thank you. My apologies for not snapping that up quicker.
Sometimes the Local Government Act has some interesting things in it. All right, well, thanks very much. I'll hand back to the duly appointed chairperson, Dean. Thank you.
Can I seek a point of clarification, Mr. Chair, that in a context of voting, I cannot vote as the informal member from council on matters like this, but I assume I can vote and move motions on matters on the floor other than this.
It's a very good question,
Because
Councillor
I've raised
White.
this before and the response was, yes, I can vote.
Okay, let me just have a look at the membership. Just hold on for a second, please.
Just while Tony is looking for that, I'll offer my memory on this one. My understanding is that both Ngāti Whakaue's representatives and your position, Councillor White, are technically informal until such time as Ngāti Whakaue has completed its settlement with the Crown, at which point both their membership and the additional regional council membership becomes formal voting members. Now, I think that the Te Maru has adopted a way of working that tries to eliminate that technical difference in as many places as possible, but in certain situations it does come up. Is that right, Tony?
I am just going back and double checking, and my apologies if I'm causing confusion here, because it may be that the advice is that you do not count towards the quorum as an informal member, but you may be able to vote. So please let me not hold up the meeting for you in this instance. Let's carry on and I will get that clarified.
Yeah, Tony, just a brief thing. That was the comment that was made when I raised that point some time back in meetings, that I could vote, but it was on a matter of quorum. That the issue was raised. So I'd be pleased if you could find that out. Otherwise, much of what I've moved in the past could simply be disqualified. Okay.
Absolutely, we'll find that out for you.
Thank you.
If I could add to that, as Joe Watts here, that's my understanding as well. So
I have just had reconfirmation that the original advice I was given, which was what generated my comment, was incorrect. It's the quorum, you don't cut vote. So please, you can definitely vote.
Well, thanks for clearing that up, Tony, and thanks for your seconding the motion. Councillor White, we'll keep that in the record then.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that's important to keep in the record because it's the second time Councillor White has had to raise the question. So we should be sorted by now. Okay.
Yeah, it's good to know my legitimacy about it.
Always legitimate, mate. Okay. Thank you all for the confidence, and I will. I think this is my third term, so in for 9 years at least. This with the addition of this. So I hope that we continue doing a great job. I believe that we do a great job, and so I hope we continue. Okay, so on that note, we'll move on to 10.2, Te Maru Kaituna River. This is our annual budget, report and budget. Are we sharing a document here? Anyone?
We are on page 22 of the agenda for this one. Is everyone able to see their agenda at the same time as participating in the Zoom, or would you like the paper to be put up on the screen as you discuss it?
I would like the paper to be, especially the discussion point of the paper, and the addition of, because there's some points of addition to that paper, isn't there? Yeah, so if we could pop that up on the screen, it'd be good. Thank you.
Right. So this page. Oh, sorry, Tony.
Would you like me to put it up?
If you put up, I'll put up the resolutions, and then when we get to the resolutions, if you could share those 3 additional ones that arose from Elva's correspondence with the chair, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Right, so this paper presents to members a very brief annual report, and thank you to Joe for drafting that. It is a 2-pager or 3-pager that is a requirement of the Tapawika Settlement Act, that there be an annual report from Te Maru to its members. So in the resolutions or the recommendations is that you receive the report, that you adopt the annual report, but that you note that better status reporting focused on Te Tini Atuna's implementation will be available from this year. And if you're if you've looked at the workshop agenda, there's an item there where one of the regional council staff members, Fiona Wood, will talk about how that kind of status reporting currently works for the Rangitaiki River Forum and how it could be presented to members. And it may also be part of the discussions that members who determine the role of the Secretariat, there may also be a link there. The third recommendation is that members note the current balance set out in the Statement of Financial Position, and I can scroll down to that shortly. The fourth one is the one that I'd really like some member input on, which is the annual budget for this financial year. I really made a bit of a guess there, so I'd like feedback on whether or not members think that the items in that are appropriate, too high, too low, or whether there are any omissions. So I'll just scroll down slightly to the statement of balance. So you started the year with 187,000 in your account. You earned $3,300 in interest. You spent $1,500 on some policy and planning advice. So you're actually making money as an authority, which is, you've got a closing balance of just under $190,000. Down here, the annual budget, I've listed some items that I think may require Te Maru to spend some money, but I'd be really keen for members to contribute to this and potentially delegate to a small subcommittee, sort of finalising it and getting it across the line if we can't get to that stage during this brief corridor here. So involvement in the hearings process for change 5, there's a possibility that you'll need some either legal or other representation, and it may be more than 10,000, but I've just put that in there as a placeholder for now. Involvement in hearings process for resource consent such as AFCO that the authority has submitted on, and then I've put in an indicative amount of 5,000 for each of the 4 projects that Te Maru is listed as the lead for in its action plan. So that would be a total spend of 35,000 from that 190,000 current balance. So I think before we put those additional recommendations around Elva, Dean, are you happy to lead a corridor on whether or not this kind of budget is satisfactory?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thanks, Pim. Just with the Secretariat, so the Secretariat position comes with the budget as well, hence those question marks, because depending on what budget we use, it'll come in there. But if we just look at potentially the budget of the authority out Te Maru at the moment, I think the overall they're kind of quite good guesstimates around what we might be able to contribute to those various projects. So unless there's anything that members feel should be increased, I don't see any decrease in any of those numbers, but if there's any increase, thought, please comment.
Kia ora, Chair, Nikki here. I just wondered about, so my assumption looking at this is a secretariat role will be funded through the long-term plan, and then this would become like an operational budget for that secretariat to support progressing some of the work. Is that the intent? And then the second part is there a need for us to identify some resource to engage in the Te Mana o Te Wai process moving forward? And I guess my just around advice or supporting Hapua we engage in that conversation with the Maru, or just whether there's a need to think about that.
So we could add that as a line if there's resource required for Te Mana o Te Wai. It might, and whatever, it could be travel for any of our members to actually go to any of these events or participate maybe. So maybe, where the other is, Te Mana o Te Wai Fund, what do you think we'd be looking at in regards to, for say, an annual amount?
If it's just travel, and I wondered if just thinking about, and I guess this is some of the stuff we might talk about in the workshop, making sure that as we're thinking about the policy for the Kaituna, that we're in this forum engaging with our communities, and particularly our Hapua iwi, around implementation of the policy statement for Te Maru o Kaituna. So I'm just keen to, so what any amount that would enable those conversations to happen. Might need some
10,000.
Yep.
Just butting in a little bit here, Joe Watts here from the water policy space. We will be talking about these very things when the workshop on the freshwater and how Te Maru would like to participate. We have quite a budget for this sort of thing, and Ruben and I will be able to talk to that in the workshop as well. So great kōrero about that and how Te Maru would like to be involved in what you need to help that to happen. We have funding in that the National Policy Statement for Freshwater package. Ka pai.
I think we can still stay with our amount, and so I mean we can draw on that if we ever need to. Any other comments?
Dean, can I just ask a question on the format?
Yeah.
Not the amounts necessarily, but I've just looked up the budget that was proposed last year, and around the same time frame, and I was just wondering if it would be a good idea to have past budgets lined up with the current budget, and it appears that we didn't really spend any of last year's budget. Is that correct?
Yeah, that sounds correct, because I think the difference with this budget coming up is that we've become more operative in regards to Te Tiniotuna, whereas the last year I think a lot of the resource was shared with the councils, mainly Bay Plenty Regional Council covered a lot of the similar type costs in that. So it might be why we had a less spend in the last financial year. But I think with the development of Te Tiniotuna, we've put our hands up that we'll lead on some of these projects here. So I'm kind of making the assumption that we will be spending a bit more resource this year around. So I don't know if it's necessary to compare against last year's budget, but good point made though.
Okay, yeah, I guess COVID's had a factor in the whole scenario as well. Thank you.
Sorry, just again, Mr. Chair, just also thinking about communications. So in the previously, whether or not we've done our own communications or had to bring in support for that, or if that's a service that council has just provided. So just thinking about whether the Secretariat would pick up some more of the comms, particularly having a bit more of a presence in the community space, given we do have Te Tini Tuna. So yeah, whether comms would be a budget item for the Secretariat to then manage.
Yeah, I would agree, Nikki. I think that is the Secretariat's one of the roles that the Secretariat should be kind of, especially with iwi and hapu, but also being able to communicate that with the messaging from us. So last year we made an attempt to upgrade the website page. So we need to communicate or socialize that website page and keep it updated. So I also see that as part of the Secretariat's role in regard, I suppose, in regards to the communication part. But I like the, I think just on that communication, as members of Te Maru, I mean, we need to front it with a lot of who we represent. And so I mean, it's not a matter of just sending a secretary or somebody into doing things. It's around us. How do we work together? And if that possibly in regards to, so if we had that $10,000 budget, that might be specifically for iwi te hui, and we just go and have a bit of a kōrero about what it is, what is the common stuff that we need to be talking about in regards to Te Manawata Wai. And so, I mean, so I suppose what we don't have and what might come later on in the workshop is that way in identifying what it is that we want to do. So in a way, we're just throwing money at a budget, which is fine. If we use it, that's fine. But I suppose if we don't, then that's fine. But it's around, I suppose, just ensuring that we've got something there. And we're aware of a whole lot of other access points to Pūtea and that's available. But this is really just for the authority at the moment, being able to participate. We have the money, so, you know, let's not be, let's not sit on our hands. Let's utilise it the best way we can. Are there any other comments in regards to parts or budget or amounts from the members?
Well, if not, then here are the resolutions for you to consider.
Okay, so those are the recommendations.
Oh, sorry, there was one other thing. This is
did
where
you want me?
we
you wanted me to put up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Sorry. Stuff from the Pātaka Kai, because that there might.
Okay.
Make some difference.
Oh, I'm back online.
Oh, that's she.
Let's see.
Francis. Oh.
Just making sure you've got the correct screen. Hang on, I've got a few of them up. Are you seeing the resolutions at the moment? I'm not sure if you are actually.
Yes. They do look dry. Yes, we've got some red text, possible additions.
Okay, great.
Okay, so these are the resolutions that we've got in the red. These are additional, and so I'll just probably read them through. Agrees that the so this is in regards to the Pūtea Te Manawata Wai that's come through for the Pātaka Kai program. So Alva has requested where does this money sit and who is going to administrate it. So this was a quick conversation yesterday to put this up. So it's still open and it's open for any comments. So agree. So I suppose we thought, well, the easiest way is to put it in the as part of the budget. that we're doing today and have Te Maru o Kaituna administrate the budget. So agrees that the Bay of Plenty Regional Council hold and administer the additional funds pursuant to Clause 9, Section 5 of the Act in the same way that the authority current funds are being held. So that's our budget and administrated. Delegates authority to the chairman. So for the actual agreement, that authority be given to the chair and the deputy chair to jointly review and execute the deeds of contracts to receive the additional funds from Te Manawa Te Wai and also Western Bay of Plenty District Council, who have also, I think, about $8,000 put towards Te Pātaka Kai. And 3, the last addition is agrees to appoint Conroy and Donald to lead and manage the project to be undertaken with the additional funding, and delegates authority to some name and name 2 to negotiate and execute an appropriate agreement to that effect up to the value of. So the last one there is asking that Conroy and McDonald be the project managers for Pātaka Kai, and I suppose their names will be the names that go in there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tuna.
That's up to Pim to speak to actually that one.
Oh, okay.
We'll hand over to him for that.
Yeah. So those are the additional kind of resolutions to this particular. We've decided to pop it in here. So Pim, do you want
so
to
Mr. Chairman, just to add a couple of things there. This is all potentially, involved in that discussion of what's the Secretariat's role versus, but because Elva has been involved with the application for funding, and she's, the engine room behind Te Tuna's drafting, and she's keen to lead the projects for which the additional funding has been obtained. The suggestion here is that you as an authority just give her a green light to go and do that. The 2 names there would be, 2 members of the authority who can sort of nut out what's a reasonable agreement with her to do that project management. And it could be the chair and deputy again, as per resolution 2, or it could be 2 other members with a particular interest in the Pātaka Kai project, for example. And then the last one is just, if we're going to add a value to the budget for this year, we just need to put an upper limit there for those 2 delegated members to negotiate with. They don't need to spend all of it, but just to give them a license to negotiate a project management contract up to whatever value is agreed by the members. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have endorsed this project and shown an interest in being involved in this, to the point where we did have a brief discussion about offering to be the fund holder, but probably from a capacity perspective, keen to work with the Te Maru on this. So I'm happy to support this with Alva and whoever else wants to help work with Alva.
I would suggest to the members that maybe name 1 be Nikki Douglas in there. Piki. Kia ora e hoa. Would you be interested in being part of this part of the resolution here as the named second person?
Yeah, good point.
Oh, ka pai, e Piki Thomas. Ka pai. I think it's really important because this project here There's a lot of focus down on the seaward end of the river, but we really need participating up in the top end of the river, and especially around this particular project. That's where all the big granddaddies and that are they all up there, and so the tuna and those sorts of things. So I'm really happy that that this is kind of shared across, I suppose.
Yeah, good idea.
Goodbye. Kia ora, Piggy. The amount, Pim, who determines that? The value. What is that?
I don't have any guidance. We don't have an offer of service from Alva to start with, so it's really up to members to decide. Well, you know, what's an upper limit that Nikki and Piki can work with, and then they can suss out what's reasonable from there, I guess.
My understanding is that the Te Mano Te Wai Māori funding is $48,000.
Yeah.
Some of that is for administrative costs and some of it's for project management costs. So yeah, so whether or not it's up to that value. And I think Alva's budget identifies what parts of the funding are used for what parts of the project. So there's a very clear budget outline anyway of how the resource should be allocated. I think it's just coming up with the agreement.
Yeah.
So I think
if you didn't want to agree on an amount now as an authority, you could just delegate authority to Nikki and Piki to come back to you with a recommended amount by email, and for that amount to be confirmed by return email if members were happy with that approach. I think we can do that, can't we, Tona?
Absolutely. We could just change the wording in this resolution and an amount to be discussed. Authority for consideration, something along those lines. Oops. For consideration. How would you like it worded?
Confirmation by email?
Confirmation, I think, rather than
Okay,
consideration.
for confirmation.
Delegating that to Nikki and Piki.
To be discussed. Or would you like that to go back to the full authority, or did you mention just delegate that to Nikki Douglas and Piki Thomas as well?
Full authority, I suppose.
well, excuse me, one more. Sorry, the second resolution is that it's delegated to the chairman and deputy chair, and then and so would we?
Apologies, Nikki. The second resolution relates to the two funding deeds with Western Bay District Council and MFE, I think it is, Te Wai Māori. The third resolution relates to the contract between Regional Council on Te Maru's behalf as the holder of the funds, and well, I suppose it can be between Te Maru or Kaituna and Donald and Conroy as Alva's company to project manage the work under those funding agreements.
Good to play. Do we need to move these? I'm assuming we do. So, okay. Everyone's happy? Okay. Can I ask for a mover? Manu, second. Mati Moana. Oh, or Nick.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now moving to 10.3, or Taiparia Reserve Concept Plan and Name Change. Matthew. Matthew Layton. Kia ora, Matt.
Sure. This is Katie's report, so I will quickly pass her over to it. She's been leading the work around Kaituna.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko tarawera toko monga, ko tarawera toko awa, ko ngā te rangatahi toko hapu, ko te arawa toko iwi, ko Katie Nganati toko ingoa. Hi everybody, Senior Recreation Planner for Western Bay District Council, and I led the engagement and the project for the renaming of Otaiparia. So as you'll see in your papers today, there's just a high-level update to you to let you know that the council adopted the draft concept plan for 83 Ford Road and the proposed name change to Otaiparia Reserve. I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Otherwise, we can take it as read if you like.
Patai, questions? No. All good.
Yeah, just sorry, Chair, just a question. Can someone just remind me where the name Otaiparia come from, just as a matter of interest?
My understanding is the area where the current proposition is. There's an old waihi tapu there called Otaiparia, and it was a kind of a. I think recently there was an archaeological dig in there, and we were involved in part of the monitoring of that, and so it's an old name. That's been there. I think it's kind of a common ground for fishing. So Te Arawa would use it as a place to gather when out fishing, those sorts of things. But Maru may be able to.
That's good enough, Mr. Chair. I think that says it all. Thank you.
Traditional name, yeah.
Good. Okay.
Well, thank you, Katie. I think
Maru's trying to say something.
Oh, is it Maru? Maru, you're muted. Unmute your microphone.
Members, while we're waiting for Maru to unmute, I will email out to you via Tone an old 1900 plan with the name recorded on it.
Are you there?
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha, Maru.
Oh, yeah. It's that's all compiled in the Waitaha documents, the historical account of all the rivers, streams, wahi tapu. If you have a look at, and of course, that's in the historical account of the Waitaha documents.
Good point.
Cut a long story short.
Yeah. Thank you, Maru. I think a while back, I think when this first came to Maru, I mean, we kind of submitted in support of this, but originally we thought some cultural benefit around the area would be nice, and I see in the budget for this that's been accommodated. So just I suppose Peter or Matt, just in regards to if you're needing support and participating towards finding people who can help in that, we may be able to help you there in finding artists or whatever. Okay.
Kia ora there. So this is just, I guess, the end of this stage of the journey, and we begin the mahi for the next stage, and we'll certainly be continue to engage with the Maru Kaituna in the process going forward as well. So thank you for that support and offer of help.
Okay. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
We're moving on. 10.4, Te Puke wastewater treatment plant reports.
Just a moment, Dean. Could we
Oh,
just have
sorry.
a mover and seconder for receipt of the report, please?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Can move.
Shad.
Chad, sorry.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah. Okay. Te Puke wastewater treatment plant report. Is it you again, Kathy? No, Matt.
It's me this time, sorry. Cool. I will happy to take it as read, but the quick update is that we've done our monitoring. This is the annual report for the year. Our monitoring team are happy to discuss anything. They're not available at the moment, but if you have got any questions, just let me know and I'll be able to get the more detailed answers. Essentially, the monitoring has shown that there's no major issues. It's all within the limits that's currently in the consents. It's worth noting that the Mātauranga Maori element is something that we're working on and working with the reference advisory group to develop. There's also at the wastewater treatment plant, the upgrades being undertaken. So the procurement process is underway at the moment, and the biological treatment process should be confirmed in mid-October, and we'll be able to give you an update then. But the physical works won't be completed until mid-2024. So it's quite a way off. Alongside that, we're also looking at the long-term alternative approach to wastewater treatment in Te Puke and alternatives to discharge to the Waiari. So discharge to sea, discharge to land. And we're working with a reference group on that as well. But happy to take any questions. I may or may not be able to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions? Just one, Matt, and you may not be able to answer this. The E. coli levels were quite high in the report. Is there a reason why?
No, but I can find out. I'll be able to follow up and get back to you on that.
Okay, mate. Thank you. Any other questions? Maru, you're on mute. Unmute.
Tone, are you able to unmute Maru from the host account?
Miranda, are you able to send them a message to that effect as the host?
Yes, I did.
Okay, there we go. Great, thank you.
I suppose for everyone's information, I was invited along to one of the group meetings, I suppose, in regards to this project there as the chair of the Maru to participate in the conversation. So, and that was more to do with local hapu and iwi. And I think Councillor Scrivenger was the chair, and one of the local tangata whenua, I think he's a Hami from Tia.
I'm not too sure if they can hear me.
Yeah, can hear you now. So he's the deputy chair. Kia ora, Maru.
Yeah, I was referring to the appeal that I made a year or two back about the Waiari. Now, the discussion I had with the judge at that particular time, it was in chambers, and he emphasized strongly on the Māori of the Waiari and Kaitaki of the Waiari. And he wanted to know about that whole background, and I gave him the story of mountains to the sea and how they were connected to the life force of the Waiari. The Waiari, and this sewerage was one of the key things. One of the key issues in that is Haumai Tikitiki, the god of the root crops. There could be, the sewage matter could be addressed, but then the sewage has to be turned into fertilizer that will enrich the soil. Now, what does that mean? That may need a riparian plan where turning sewage into compost should be one of the key issues in terms of when you're dealing with sewage on the Waiari. That's a long story, but that again, that matter needs to be discussed more thoroughly about that appeal with the Judge Smith at that particular time. It's just been skirted over. Incidentally, yeah.
Are you part of the advisory to this project for, say, we're in your Waitaha? Are you on this?
Yes, I was an appellant to that, and the argument that we had with Judge Smith at that particular time that we were an affected party, not a party of interest, which meant that strong consultation had to be applied to the affected party. In other words, we weren't just an advisory group. We were supposed to be there to create policies. So it's more serious than just an advisory group.
Okay.
And that's the four parties, Ngāti Whakaue, the Mahanga o Te Arawa Kohei, and Ngāti Whakaue.
You got that, Matt?
I've noted that down, and I'll have a chat with Amber, who's involved with that. Thank you very much.
Okay then. Any other questions? No? Yes?
Kia ora, it's Nikki. I just probably just a comment that I understand that the environmental monitoring plan in this report is provided as part of a requirement under consent conditions, but I guess I mean, given, I guess I'd be interested to hear, you know, from the kaitiaki about, you know, their not just this in terms of how they see the monitoring plan, but more broadly, given that we are talking about implementation of the policy statement. So this report is just in response to a need for a report on consent conditions, but I'm probably interested in what it might look like moving forward, and just be interested in hearing about the Mātauranga Māori plan and what their thoughts are on that in future. And that might be something we pick up in our workshop in terms of how do we as a group understand you know, the mahinga kai and Mātauranga implementation through the policy statement rather than you know, just these consent condition reports.
Kia ora, Nikki. I think that is part of our workshop today, this following. So, okay, on that point, we'll move to
we'll just do the mover and seconder to receive again.
Oh, sorry,
please.
yeah.
I'm happy to move to receive the report.
Thank you.
Okay, second, Picky. Okay, 10.5, that's the update on the proposed change 5.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. I'd ask that my report be taken as read unless there are any questions which I can respond to.
Any questions from members for the update? Thank you, Moana. Moving to 11, public excluded section. So this is where
To jump back, can I get a mover and second again? Sorry, I know I'm a bit of a broken record
sorry.
here, but
yeah. So I'll move.
Thank you.
Moana's report. Can I have a seconder? Much more on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so point 11. So this is the public excluded section. So advise that just before we do this, though, the workshop, we'll start again later. We're going to have a 10-minute break after this, but I'm going to ask that only the members stay on because for this next part. Okay, so I'll just give time for Tuna or Miranda to go through, and then we'll get to this next part. Okay.
Do you want to identify a time where we will start again in case we get any